This is Gemara Nazir Daf Mem Tes, and we're holding on Mem Ches Amid Beis, approximately 15 lines from the bottom. The first word in the line is Mitamei. We're in the middle of discussing the different Isurim and Heterim of a Nazir and a Kohen Gadol with regard to Toma. Most importantly, that a Nazir and a Kohen Gadol have an Isser to become Tamei, Meis, and then there is the general allowance of a Nazir and a Kohen Gadol to become Tamei to a Meis mitzvah. The question is the sources for these dinim and all the other various halachas. So yesterday we dealt with a long and lengthy brisa, which was the opinion of Rabbi Yishmael. Today we pick it up again, Memchesam and Beis, about 15 lines to the bottom. The first one line is Mitamei, learning the shita of Rabbi Akiva. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Akiva Omer, says Rabbi Akiva. And Rabbi Akiva is darshaning the pasuk in Devarim by the pasuk in not Devarim. 1 second. In Bamidbar, yes. Bamidbar Parak Vav. Kol yimei ziro Hashem al nefesh meis lo yavoi. So first it says meis lo yavoi. Then it says aviv imay achav achaisai. So each of these words are going to teach us something different, similar to what we learned yesterday in the opinion of Rabbi Yishmael. So says Rabbi Kiva Omer, Nefasha Elu Harachaikim. Once the pasuk says Kol yimei ziro Hashem al nefesh meis, on the soul of a meis, he cannot become tamei. Elu harachaikim. Those are the people he's not related to. He can't become tamei. Meis. When the pasuk says meis, elu akroivim, he can't even become tamei to his relatives. The pasuk continues, la'aviv lo'imoi einoi mitamei. He cannot become tamei to his father or mother. But what's the obvious implication? It says Rabbi Akiva, aval mitamei u'lemeis mitzvah. He can yes become tamei to a meis mitzvah. The pasuk continues, la'achiv to his brother. What does that teach us? Shema Kohen Gadol v'hu Nazir. Now we up the ante. We have a Kohen Gadol who's as well a Nazir. From there we learn out la'achiv einoi mitamei. The pasuk says la'achiv, so then he cannot become tamei to his brother. Aval mitamei hu lemeis mitzvah. But now, even if he's a Nazir and a Kohen Gadol, he could become tamei to a meis mitzvah. Now, anyone who's wondering 1 second, once we know that a Nazir who's a Kohen Gadol could become tamei to meis mitzvah, of course, a regular Nazir could become tamei to meis mitzvah. So why do we need the first drasha? Just to point out, because it's a little bit easier to see this as we're reading it. The Gemara just quoted Rabbi Kiva that la'aviv u'le'imay mitamei, but yes, be mitamei to meis mitzvah. Then it says la'achiv, don't be mitamei, but be mitamei lemeis mitzvah. So once we have the second pasuk by Nazir and a Kohen Gadol is yes allowed to be mitamei to meis mitzvah. Of course, a Nazir by himself could be mitamei to meis mitzvah. So what do we need the first drasha for? The Gemara will deal with that. La'achaisai to his sister. Keditanya, as we learned in a Braisa, Harei Shahaya, Haylech Lishcheres Peschai. Someone's going to check the car Pesach Lamal Esbenai Vechulu, and then he encounters a mitzvah. That even though he's on the way to perform a mitzvah, so even though, and if he doesn't do that mitzvah, he's chayiv kares. We need a special pasuk teaching us, but no, mitzvah trumps all. That's the end of the drasha of Rabbi Akiva. Now we're going to ask, how does Rabbi Akiva learn out the different dinim like we learned yesterday in the brisa of Rabbi Yishmael? So says the Gemara, well, Rabbi Akiva, Gzeir Shava de Rabbi Minalei. How does he know the Gzeir Shava of Rabbi? Rabbi used the pasuk of Le'imai to teach us Gzeir Shava, which was what? Which was that a Nazir is allowed to become Tamei for Tzaras, is allowed to become Tamei for Ziva, that the only Isser is being Mitamei Lemis. So how does Rabbi Akiva know that drasha if he's using the word Le'imai for something else in the pasuk? Rabbi Akiva responds, Kiva Damar Mar. And this is what we pointed out when we read the Braisa. 10 lines to the bottom. First word on the line is Mar. Kiva Damar Mar, my Kohen Gadol v'Nazir. Nazir. Le'echav eina mitamei. Aval mitamei lemeis mitzvah. Once we learned out that if there's a Kohen Gadol and a Nazir together, can yes be mitamei lemeis mitzvah. Ma'ali Kohen Gadol lechodei, ma'ali Nazir v'Kohen Gadol. If I already know Kohen Gadol v'Nazir, certainly Nazir l'chudei, and therefore the pasuk of le'imai is not needed. Le'imai eina mitame. We don't need the le'imai for that to teach me mitame l'meis mitzvah. So we can use it for the Joshua of Rebbe that what he's allowed to become tamei for saras and ziva. So now says the Gemara, okay, Rabbi Akiva, you darshan up the pasuk beautifully, but now we throw the ball back to Rabbi Yishmael, who was yesterday's Joshua. Asked the Gemara, well, Rabbi Yishmael, Kohen Gadol v'hu Nazir minali. He didn't discuss that case. So how does he know Kohen Gadol is a Nazir, is allowed to be metamei l'meis mitzvah? Says the Gemara, Kivin d'shayrach mana chadlav gabi meis mitzvah. Says Rabbi Yishmael, who told you there's any difference between a Nazir to be metamei to meis mitzvah and a Nazir and a Kohen Gadol? Just because you have two things together makes it a bigger chiddush? Says Rabbi Yishmael, Kivin d'shayrach mana one lav for a meis mitzvah, mali chad lav, mali train lavin. What's the difference if it's one lav? What's the difference if it's two lavin? Says Rabbi Yishmael, I don't need another pasuk. Says the Gemara, great, if that's true according to Rabbi Yishmael, achaisai lamali. Why does Rabbi Yishmael need the pasuk of achaisai? What's the question? Rabbi Akiva learned achaisai to teach me that if someone's going to shech the karban pesach, bring, or to do a bris milah, still meis mitzvah wins. Meaning, if you're on the way and there's a chiv karis in front of you, still a meis mitzvah wins. Ask the Gemara, if you, Rabbi Yishmael, just told me he doesn't care about one lav, two lav, and seemingly should be no difference between the karis either. If Rabbi Yishmael is learning all Avirus are equal, so then of course meis mitzvah should win. Why do we need another pasuk of la'achaisai? Answers Rabbi Yishmael, the obvious answer, 3 lines to the bottom. I would have thought that when the Torah said, you come tamei to meis mitzvah, l'meis mitzvah, Nazir v'kohen Nazir l'meis, l'meis mitzvah, Nazir v'kohen de'isuri lavihu. That's when we have regular lavin. So Yisrael says 1 lav, 2 lav, that doesn't make a difference to me. It could be tamei to meis mitzvah. Avol Milo, Pesach, the Kares. That's a different category. That's a positive mitzvah. That's a Kares. Lo yitamei l'meis mitzvah. I would think that in that category, maybe you're not metamei l'meis mitzvah. Says Rabbi Yishmael, Kamash Mlan. That is the chiddush of la'achaisai. Says the Gemara, okay, now let's throw the ball back. Throw the ball back to Rabbi Kiva. Well, Rabbi Kiva, ask the Gemara as we turn over to Mem Tesam and Aleph, a very short Amud Aleph. Ask the Gemara, Ul Rabbi Kiva Mechti. Let's see. Lo yishna kohen gadol lechudei, lo yishna kohen gadol v'hu Nazir. There is no difference when with regards to the coming tamei for the meis mitzvah. There's no difference whether he's a kohen gadol by itself or a kohen gadol v'hu Nazir. Nafka mele achiv. So you should be able to learn it out from la'achiv, la'aviv, u'le'imai lamali. And we're really asking particularly on la'aviv, because we already learned le'imai. We just darshed that a moment ago. So what does he do? He darshed le'imai for the pasuk of Rebbe. So what does he do with la'aviv? Answers Rabbi Kiva Srichi, because of aviv. If the Torah would have just written aviv, he does not metame to. This is a kohen gadol and Nazir. Hava mina ainu taima delay metamele. Why is he not metame to his father? There's a fundamental difference between the relationship that every person has with his father and his mother. You would think that you're not metame to your father. How does one know that the father is the father? It's a chazaka. Of course, halacha, chazaka is absolute. Chazaka is bulletproof. It's 100%. But lamaisa, it's a chazaka. Aval imai, meaning it's just a presumption that this man is his father. We can never know with absolute conclusivity that any person is a father. Aval imai, but when it comes to one's mother, that we do know with more of a veracity. The adina and the alduse, we know she gave birth to this person. So latamala. So maybe I would think that when it comes to being metameh to one's mother, there's a higher level that one should yes become tameh. Therefore, that is the reason why it had to write imay. Because of Rachmana imay, and if it just said imay, hava amina imay letamela wide lav azal zari basra. So now we're going to see that there's a ma'ila, there's an advantage of the father. when it comes to the mother, the yichos, the zare, the lineage, does not go after the mother. This is regard to nachala. This is regard to what shevet a person comes from. It all goes by the father. So you would think when it comes to becoming tamei, maybe you're not mitame to your mother because the yichos, the nachala, the inheritance doesn't go after the mother. 3 lines from the bottom, Mem Tes Amud Aleph. Aval aviv kima damar mar, since Mar says lemishbechaisam levis avoisam emal mitamele. So you would think that it's yes mitame to the father. Why? Because one's shevet, one's nachla inheritance goes by the father. Kamash Milan, you can't even become tamei to the father. So that is how Rabbi Akiva needs the extra word la'aviv. And while we're explaining La'aviv, it brings out the chiddush of Le'imai as well. Continues the Gemara on the last line. Why does Rabbi Akiva, why does the pasuk, according to Rabbi Akiva in Vayikra, have to repeat? We seemingly should already know this from the pasuk that we started off with today, with the pasuk in Bamidbar, Perek Vav, that taught us all these dinim with regard to a Nazir. Seemingly, it should translate very simply to a Kohen Gadol. So why does the Torah in Vayikra have to write the same exact halachas with regard to a Kohen Gadol, that he can't become tamei to a regular corpse, etc.? Answers the Gemara as we turn over to Mem Tes Amud Beis. Al kol, when the pasuk says on any lafuki rechaykim. Okay, that comes to say you can't become tamei to non-relatives. Meis lafuki krivim nefashai relatives. Nefashai is the pasuk. Nefashai lafuke, and here's the chiddush. Revi is dam sheyatzim mishnei meisim. Says Rabbi Akiva that not only can a Kohen Gadol not become tamei to an actual mace, even the blood of a mace, the quantity of blood which is a revius, which is the amount that can impart tama, the Kohen Gadol cannot become tamei even by touching. Is not allowed to become tamei by touching the blood. And not only is he not allowed to touch the revius dam, even if it comes mishnei meisim, if there's a half of this quarter from one mace and half of this quarter to another mace, still the two of them combine to impart tama, and the Kohen Gadol cannot touch it to become tamei. Shemetame ba'oyel, the revius dam, nefashos lafuki revius dam sheyatza. It comes mishnei mesim. Shemetame ba'oyel, that is the quantity that imparts tumas oil, that if it's underneath the same roof as one, he becomes tamei. Shenemar al kol nafshes meis lo yavoi. So the reason why the Torah repeats this iser of the Kohen Gadol becoming tamei to a mace is to teach us this extra chiddush. Not only can he not become tamei to the mace, he cannot become tamei even to the dam, the blood, the quantity that would impart tama in an oil. Now we're at the Mishnah Mem Tes Amud Beis, and really in continuation of the Gemara that we just saw, the Mishnah continues over here discussing when it comes to a Nazir. Again, we always have this two dinim working hand in hand, Nazir and Kohen Gadol. So now we go back to a Nazir, and the Mishnah now deals with when it comes to a Nazir. If a Nazir becomes tamei, a Nazir is not allowed to become tamei, as we've been learning the past few days. If a Nazir becomes tamei, what does he have to do? He has to shave his head, he has to bring the karbanos, etc., etc. So what type of tama requires the Nazir to do this whole ritual of a Nazir tamei? So says the Mishnah, Alelu tama is a Nazir migaleach. And the Mishnah uses migaleach, that he has to shave, to bring out that the Nazir is chayiv, is obligated the entire procedure of giluach, of shaving, of karbanos, etc. So the following tamais, the Nazir has to shave. Al hameis, number one, if the Nazir touches a mace, obviously. Val kezayis min a mace, even if it's only an olive's worth from a mace. And a lot of these we've learned previously. Val kezayis neitzel, if the Nazir touches a kezayis of neitzel, which is some gel-like substance that when after the dead body is left around, it decomposes. So the decomposition of the dead body of a Concise worth also makes the Nazir Tameh. V'almali tarvaid rekev. Similarly, if there's corpse dust, which is the bones, the dry bones decompose into some sort of dust, so if there's a ladle full of that, Valashidra, and on the spine, Vialgulgolis, and on the skull, Valivra min amis, if there's a limb from the dead body, Valivra min achai, if there's a limb from a live body, Shishla Basar Karai, that it has some flesh on the bone. What does it mean, karai, a man of flesh, that if this bone was attached to a living being, the flesh would grow? Valchatzi kav atzamais, and a half a kav of bones. Valchatzi lug dam, a half a lug of dam, of blood. Amagan, on touching them. Valmasan, and carrying them. Valalilan, if you're under the same roof as them. Al etzem kisaira, if there's a bone the size of a barley grain. Al magayan, touching it. Valmasaya, and carrying it. Al elu, and all of these. Nazir migaleach. And now we get the whole process. Not only does he have to shave, and they have to sprinkle him with the Efer Para Adum on the 3rd and 7th day. And it destroys all the days that he's kept Nazir so far. He said he's not allowed to restart counting his Nazirus. Until he becomes tar, he has to wait the requisite amount of days, which we're seeing here is obviously at least 7, to get the Ephah, the Parah Aduma, sprinkled on him. Or maybe as karbanaisav, and brings his karbanais. So if he touches any of these entities, the Nazir, he has to shave his head, sprinkle on day 3 and 7, bring the karbanais, and then when he becomes tar, he starts counting his Naziris again. So says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, we're starting the Gemara at the bottom of Memtes Amid Beis. We're going to quote a Brisa, which is going to deal with a din similar to a Mishnah. Achar P'tirasa Shel Rameir. After Rameir was nifter, Amalan Rabbi Yehuda Talmidav. Rabbi Yehuda told his Talmidim, Al Yekonsu Talmidei Rameir Lekan. Do not allow Rameir's Talmidim into here. Rabbi Yehuda said, Rameir's Talmidim are going to be looking for a Rebbe. They're going to want to join our yeshiva. Said Rabbi Yehuda, don't let them. You know why? Not because I don't like his Talmidim, chas v'shalom, but they're kantaranim. They like just to cause fights. They're critics. And they're not really coming to learn Torah. Ella, you know why they're coming? They're just coming to fight with me in halachais, just coming to try to prove me wrong and prove that their Rabbi Rameir was right. Maybe it means to undermine me. So said Rabbi Yehuda, don't allow the Talmidim of Rameir in here. But lo and behold, 4 lines at the bottom, Dochak Sumches V'nichnas. Sumches, Talmud of Rameir, pushed his way in and got into the yeshiva of Rabbi Yehuda. Amr lehem, and Sumches says, Kach shana li Rameir, my Rabbi Rameir taught me. Alelu Tomos Nazir Migaleach. On the following Tomos, the Nazir has to shave his head and do the whole process. On the dead body, on the excitement of the dead body. Cause Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda hears what's going on. And Rabbi Yehuda gets upset. And he tells his Talmidim, Loikach amarti lachem al yikansu. Talmidi Rameir lekan. Says Rabbi Yehuda, did I not tell you not to allow the Talmidim of Rameir in here? What in the world is Simchas doing here? That they're coming to fight with me. If a Concise from Ames is Megaleach, Al Ames Loi Kol Shekain. So Rav Yehuda, obviously, when he taught the din of our Mishnah to his Talmidim, he didn't say Al Ames Val Concise min Ames. Why not? Says Rav Yehuda, if you're Matame from a Concise min Ames, from an olive of a mace, certainly the mace itself you're Matame. So why would you have to say it twice? And so therefore, when Sumchas came in, and Sumchas started saying, you're Matame for a Concise Ames, and a Concise min Ames, Rav Yehuda got very upset. Why do you have to say both things? It's completely unnecessary. Once you know the din that you're Matame for a mace itself, it's completely obvious that you're Matame for a Concise min Ames. So Rav Yehuda started saying, this is the reason why I didn't want the Talmidim of Rameir in here. Why did you allow him in? And we turn over to tomorrow's Daf Yomi Aleph. Let's just finish the conversation Amar Rav Yosi, says Rav Yosi, Yoimru, they're going to say, Meir Shachav Yehuda Kas. Rav Yosi said to himself, they're going to say that a Meir was nifter. Rav Yehuda got upset. Yosi Shasak, Yosi was quiet. Taira Mataheyala, what's going to be with the Taira? What's going to be with the MS? So Rav Yosi felt, if you're just going to be quiet, no one's going to learn the right way to learn the Mishnah. So Amar Rav Yosi, says Rav Yosi, Lo nitzcha l'meisha ein alav k'zayis balsar. You know what the two cases? Case number one, the Nazir becomes tummy to a mace. Case number two, if he becomes tummy to a mace, he needs to do giluach. Case number two is kizayis min a mace. It's coming to teach me that if there's a mace that does not have kizayis balsar on it, that as well makes the Nazir tummy that he has to shave, etc. Questions the Gemara, 4 lines down. Vadayin yomer al ever mimenu megalech al kulo loikol shekain. What do you mean? Continue reading the Mishnah, continue reading the Braisa. If you shave even for an aver, for a limb, certainly for the whole body. So once we list in the Mishnah the aver, why do you have to list the whole body of the mace? Ella answers the Gemara, explains for Rav Yosi, Kedamar Rav Yochanan. You know what the case in the Mishnah, the first words ala meis are necessary, which are the words that Sumchas is coming to the Beis Medrash to teach. Ela lenefel shel niskashru ivarav begidin. A nefel, a stillborn, an aborted fetus, whose limbs were not bound together literally with the gidim, with the sinews. So you would think maybe at this early stage of development, it does not transmit tama. So the Mishnah has to list ala meis, val kazayis min ameis, to teach me even in this case, even though there's not a kazayis of meis, it still transmits tama. Ask about 1 second. Hachanami b'nefesh lo niskashu ivara begidin. Excuse me, so Hachanami, so that's the din of Rav Yochanan. Rav Yochanan taught that if you have a nefel shel niskashu ivarav begidin, it has a din of tama. So says Rav Yosi, that's what the extra words of Alamis in the Mishnah are coming to teach us. Rav Amar, a different Mishnah. With this we conclude. Lo nischa ella l'roiv binyanai l'roiv minyanai she'in bem roiv atzamais. If we have the majority of the skeletal frame or the number of bones, even though there's not a roiva, a quarter kav of bones, and therefore you would think that maybe it does not transmit tumah, as the dinim of tumah v'tayra teach us. Over here, with regard to a nazir, will yes become tamei. So Rav Yosi, Taira matei aleh, says Rav Yosi. It's very good that Rav Yehuda is upset that Sumchas the Talmud of Rav Meir is here and seemingly adding on a din that's completely unnecessary. Why did the Braisa have to say Meis and Kizayis min HaMeis, which of course is the text of our Mishnah, but now we understand that there's potentially 2 Chadushim that the actual words of Ala Meis are coming to teach us. That if a Nazir becomes Tameh either to a Nefel Shal Niskashu Evara of the earlier stage of this aborted fetus, that the limbs are not tied together with the sinews, or if we have the majority of the frame or the number of bones, even though there's not a quarter kav of bones there, in these cases the Nazir will as well become tameh, require giluach, to be sprinkled the 3rd and 7th day, and bring the karbanos. We'll pick it up from the 2 dots in the next year. B'siyata Dishmayo.